All right, ladies and gentlemen, pitch decks wait for no one. Hope you all doing well today. We've reached our critical mass. Welcome to Zoe's ever popular pitch deck workshop. My name is Brian Bergeron. I'm a volunteer here at Work on Climate, which is sponsoring this event. I'm also joined by Christina Armour from our founders sub community team. She'll be helping to monitor the chat and support on the tech side of things. Thank you, Christina. Say about the founders sub community in a couple minutes, but first I want to talk to you all a little bit about Work on Climate. So Work on Climate is a nonprofit organization in the world's largest, most active community addressing talent shortages in climate. Over 28,000 members. We ran this workshop in November, and I'm using similar script, and I had to update the 26,000 to 28,000. So still growing at a pretty healthy clip here. We're on a mission to transform the talent ecosystem and build the workforce humanity needs to solve climate change equitably and justly. Our goal is to make climate work mainstream, empowering hundreds of millions of people everywhere with the skills and support they need to use their talents to build climate solutions. Recently, we've been structuring our educational efforts towards building communities of practice, which focuses on building and practicing skills. In the case of a number of our efforts, the bar we are looking to exceed is our programs helping members pass an interview for a climate job. In the case of this event, since it focuses on founders and entrepreneurs, the bar is, does this program help founders get funded, validate their business idea, or move them a step further along during their founder's journey? As I mentioned, this event is sponsored by the Founders Subcommunity, which you can find in hashtag Roll Founders channel on our Slack. If you're not a member in our Slack, Christina will post a direct link to that channel. If you're not a member of our Slack, what are you waiting for? No, we'll post a link so you can join Slack there as well. The Founders Subcommunity takes our community as a practice focus and applies it specifically to the entrepreneurial journey. While we've been pretty light touching our programming and efforts with the Founders Subcommunity so far, as we've been entirely volunteer run, we're currently hiring a full-time program manager to support all of the founders in our subcommunity. So there's going to be lots of exciting things to come over the course of the year. And we also just recently brought in a more general community program manager as an employee of Work on Climate as well too, which runs very lean on the employee front and has over 100 volunteers. So we genuinely want to know what is important to you and your journey as a founder while we evolve our programming. So for that reason, we've opened up a survey to learn about your needs and preferences for program formats. Looks like I didn't shut off the annotation, Zoe. Oh well, we're almost there, so I'm just gonna leave it on. So feel free to scroll all over my screen. So Christina will post that survey in the chat as well too. So please take 5 minutes to fill it out. It's incredibly helpful to make sure that we are building the community that best benefits its members. Usually we do like a post-event survey, but we're focusing all of our efforts to get people to fill out this founders survey. We spent a lot of time putting together. We spent a lot of time analyzing. So please take a look. And so finally, Sal, one of the volunteers for the founders subco, who couldn't join us today because he's on an interview for a climate job. Go Sal. He'll be hosting office hours in the coming weeks. Talk about the community, our evolution to communities of practice, engagement, and subject matter experts as well. And also to just be a sounding board for your opinions. So join us in Roll Founders channel to learn more about the office hours once they are scheduled. So with that, it's a great pleasure to welcome Zoe. Zoe's on a mission to get climate solutions out of the lab and into the mainstream with the power of storytelling. As a brand strategist and designer, her well-crafted pitch decks have helped to raise millions for climate founders. She's interested in how climate founders can better communicate their ideas to investors by getting to know the humans on the other side of the pitch. So she has a presentation she's going to share about getting your pitch deck to fire on all cylinders. Then we'll critique a couple of pitch decks from the community. If we don't have time, or we didn't have time to get to every pitch deck submission that we got today, after this, we'll open up in the Roll Founders channel on Slack, and we'll be offering asynchronous pitch deck critiques. They don't have to be completely polished. They can be rough drafts. The intention is in terms of fostering this community of practice that we're just learning out in the open together. So we'll be posting some highlights from this video, bringing on some folks that we didn't have time for to critique today, as well as inviting folks who maybe weren't able to join because of the time restrictions of this time slot onto the channel. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and invite Zoe. but really stop screen sharing. Okay, great.
Hello. Thank you so much, Brian, for that lovely intro. And oh, let me just make a little adjustment here. Get this so I can see everybody. All right. Thanks again for the intro, Brian. And thank you, Work on Climate, for hosting. And I just want to shout out Work on Climate for just being really awesome in this community and being really supportive of everyone's journey of moving into the climate space and meeting them no matter where they're at. They were a big part of my own switch into the climate space. And it's been really cool to see you guys grow over the years and lots of hardworking folks there and a lot of volunteers. So props to you guys. So thank you all for taking time out of your day to be here. A lot of you are founders, and founders are some of the busiest people I know. So I really appreciate you giving me your attention, which is highly valuable. I am Zoë Dove-Many. I run Hello Creative, which is a collective of strategists, designers, and copywriters. Um, and I'm a storyteller for climate startups. So we just help climate startups grow and often get funded by getting super clear on their storytelling. We work with individual climate startups, VCs, accelerators, and communities like Work on Climate. In case anyone needs to drop off early, there is a free thing available to you. I have a little pitch deck guide that you can get when you subscribe to my newsletter, which comes like once a month. And the newsletter that is the thing that comes once a month, and a free mini course on building a pitch deck that's attached to that. And I think Christina has kindly dropped it in the chat. Thank you, Christina. So a little bit about my background. I have been working on branding and design of these brands and others for 10 years before I got into climate work. And it was really fun. I learned a lot, but when 2020 hit, there was just so much wrong with the world, including but not limited to climate change, making some grand appearances that year. And I live in Southern California. The wildfires are really bad. And I just felt like all I had been doing all this time was washing and reusing my plastic containers and composting my scraps like on the balcony and doing taking the actions, but the impact's pretty minimal there. And I wondered, how can I do more? And I remembered how powerful storytelling had been at companies like these. And I asked myself, how can I use the tools that I honed here and apply that to climate change? And that began a winding road to you. And when I started to meet founders of climate startups like yourself who had these brilliant solutions in their hands, I figured out what my mission was, which is why I'm here today, to get climate change solutions out of the lab and into the mainstream with the power of storytelling. I want to give climate entrepreneurs the tools that we use at places like BET, the People's Choice Awards, and Hyatt to articulate and amplify their messages. So we've got 90 minutes today. For the first 20 minutes, I'm going to walk you through some best practices and things that I always think about when I create pitch decks. And then I have on here 3 decks, but we're actually just going to do 2. And we'll kind of peer review them. And then Brian will wrap it up and we'll send you on your way. So today is going to be very collaborative. If you feel comfortable, please turn on your cameras. It's so fun to see your faces and be able to interact with you guys. I'd love to, and if you could, sometimes I'll be asking everybody, the group a question, and if you could just use the raise hand function. Yay, faces. Thank you, guys. So let's get to it. Let's talk about pitch decks. So, storytelling in a broader sense is all about empathy. And I want us all to use our imaginations. And this is what I always do at the beginning of any project that I'm working on, is I really think deeply about who the audience is and who that one person is who it needs to reach and what headspace are they in when they're coming across this piece of communication that I'm building. So here we're looking at a VC, and I want us all to step out of your shoes and into this guy's shoes. And he is tired. The sun is setting. He wants to go home and see his family, but he's been in calls all day. His inbox is a mess. He opens up this email. He sees a link to a pitch deck. What do you think his state of mind is? Um, and you can just use the raise hand function and I'll call you. What do you think is what's his state of mind? Do you think he's excited about opening these pitch decks? Adam, if you can take yourself off mute.
I think
Yeah,
he's
go
already
ahead.
seen 100 pitch decks today, and this is just another one he's going to look at. And there better be something exciting in the first 30 seconds of the first slide, otherwise he's gone.
Yeah, I think you're right. He's already seen 100 today. There better be something exciting in the first 30 seconds.
There has to be some kind of emotional evocation there. Otherwise, you lose him immediately. He's pulling out his phone. He's checking his email. He's trying to get rid of his messy inbox.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like he's fighting what's in front of him already. He's like, get it out, get it out, get it out. How can we filter? I saw someone raise their hand, but then I think it went back down. Oh, yeah. Is it Varshika? Just guessing.
Yeah,
Feel free to correct me.
you got it right. I've been in this situation, and what I was feeling is this is not life. Like, I need to do something not related to looking at my inbox and work and slides, and I need to be doing something else other than that to actually make an impact.
Okay, so I think if I can repeat what you said this is not life. And yeah, and I need to get out of my inbox and make an impact. Yeah. What do you think he wants to know about this pitch deck that just showed up? What's like the first question that might come to his mind? Adam?
How's it going to help me achieve my goals?
How is it going to help me achieve my goals?
His goal, if he's a standard VC, not an impact VC, he's looking at a 10x return in 5 years, and he wants to know how that can happen. If he's an impact VC, maybe it's the numbers are a little bit higher. Maybe it's or higher and lower 3 to 5 times over a 7 to 8 year period. But that's what they want to know.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. What I heard was, how is it going to help me achieve my goals? And even if you're not making pitch deck, no matter what you're making, if you're writing an email newsletter or making a flyer, the question that the recipient of this information is asking is, what's in it for me? Why should I care? Robin.
I was actually going to say just that. Why do I care about this thing in front of me? I mean,
Yeah.
that we face that as people who look at any kind of media. Why do I want to read this story? Why do I want to listen to this podcast? Why do I want to attend this webinar? Why do I care?
Yeah. And I think you brought up a good point. We've all been in this person's shoes in some form or another by just having so much media in front of us all the time and having to filter it and decide why we should care about things. And I mean, when is the last time any of you went to a website and read all of the words on the website? It never happens, right? So we have to go into this scenario thinking this guy's not going to read my pitch deck. He's going to skim it. He's going to spend maybe 30 to 90 seconds on it. So I like to think of a pitch deck as a trailer. And I think we're often, we're tempted to just stuff it with information because we have so much that we're excited about, we want to share. And that is unfortunately the kiss of death often Because this guy, like we said, he doesn't have time and he doesn't have the focus. So we want to just grab his attention and remember that the meetings that follow are where we can show him the whole movie. And that is usually in the meetings that follow is when we talk about when we go into more detail about the technology, the business plan, anything that's sort of in depth. And it's useful to remember that no one is investing because of your pitch deck alone. So the goal of your pitch deck isn't really get this person to invest. It's to get them hooked. And hooked enough to get a meeting. And one thing that definitely won't get you a meeting is if you confuse them. So Donald Miller is a famous writer, a marketing writer. He wrote the book Story Brand. And he famously said, if you confuse, you lose. This is in everything if you're designing a website, whatever. And this is the biggest mistake I see in pitch decks. It usually looks like one of two things. One is talking way too much about the solution and technology, or it's kind of skipping right over. It's kind of like skipping step one and going to step two and like skipping right over what your startup even does in the first place. Because we're all so close to our companies that we kind of forget to zoom out and give that 30,000-foot view. So the pitch deck really is that 30,000-foot view. And how do we keep ourselves in that space is we remember this guy. What kind of information does he need? He's tired, he's impatient, he's ready to go home. He's not here to read the whole thing. So how can we use design and use copy strategically to make the deck scannable? One of the biggest misconceptions about design is that it's the purpose of it is to make things pretty, but design is actually a really powerful tool. And I want you to think of it as a tool for communication. So I'm going to show you how it can be used in effective ways in this scenario. And just as a broader thing, just remember, we're always trying to show, not tell. We're trying to make it super easy for this guy to skim through the deck and kind of get what it's about. And this often means taking what starts as text and turning it into something visual. I see some hands up. We're actually only doing 2 decks today, so I guess we can go ahead. Agneta, what do you got?
No, I was just thinking, it sounds like you're assuming that you send a pitch deck before you have a meeting.
Yes.
I mean, you may even want to send less than that to get a meeting. So I just wanted some conversation around that. Or maybe you have different types of pitch deck, like one mini version.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've never created one of those, but I'm curious about how you can play with the format, because it seems like that could be useful. Usually what I see is people send a reading deck and then that has a little bit more information in it actually. And then when they present it, it has a little bit less information written because they're going to be talking through the slides. Adam, did you have something to add?
Yeah, the other thing I use a lot and I counsel my clients to use is Loom, which allows you to put a little video of you doing the speaking part of the deck. And it makes it a little bit longer, but I counsel people to send that brief deck, but also send a link to a Loom deck so that you can actually talk through it as well.
Yeah, I love that. Loom is such a great tool. And I have seen people do that, and I think it's awesome. I love that. So I want us all to think of our pitch deck as a machine that does one thing, has one purpose. And that one thing is that it conveys a single clear message. So just like this machine, each little part works in service of its overall purpose. Each part of the deck, so each slide, and then every piece inside each slide, like the text, the photos, the charts, they all work in service of this larger message. And speaking of being pretty, notice how even the color here helps to understand what the machine is used for. So we passively consume media all the time. And the reason that we can do that and just absorb it without thinking about anything is that all of these stories, whether it's, let's say, a movie, is thoughtfully served up to us with tools that filmmakers have available to them, like dialogue and cinematography and lighting and sound and music and special effects. And they're making all these really careful choices to drive home a message, a story or a theme. And I want your pitch deck to be passively consumed by a tired VC and have them kind of ballpark get it. We don't want to make them work to understand anything. So what do we have in our toolkits when we're building a pitch deck? So first and most obviously, we have words. Words are great. We love them. But when we have too many, they don't work anymore. No one wants to read your wall of text. This is a deck that I made last year. The product, which was a dental care app and marketplace, was pretty complicated. And when an investor comes across the deck, the thing is they don't really care how the product works. They more want to know, what is the thing? What does it do? What's the impact that it's making? What's in it for me? And when we and so the way that I use text here, you can see how you can skim through the deck and kind of get what this is about. We're seeing like the large images that we're seeing, the large text that we're seeing is all giving us clues about what this is, without us having to do a lot of, burn a lot of mental calories, take on a cognitive load, I guess is how you might say that. So this is a detail of one of the slides. This is, again, if you blur your eyes and just like skim through this is something I do all the time when I'm designing something is I'll kind of squint and make it so it's blurry. And what's standing out to me and what is it making me understand? So what I'm seeing when I do that is the biggest words on the page. Flossy is a modern alternative to dental insurance. And I'm seeing two boxes, and one is one color and one is another color. And one says Flossy and one says dental insurance. So all of these things are screaming at me. And this is what we want to do, is hit people over the head with information. Graphic design is not a place to be subtle, really, with like the delivery of information. We're saying, hey, compare these two things to each other. And this one's better because there's a star on it. And you don't really have to read all this if you don't want to. But if you want to, it's there. This design, this I did not design, but I really like it. I think it's a nice economic use of, there is economy in the use of text, in sort of repeating, being able to kind of switch out what these words, where these words would go. And we have, so we can get the idea of the slide really fast. And then if we want to know more, we can look at the smaller text. So the designer has made a very careful choice as to what is the thing that they want the VC to read first. And then what is the thing they want them to read second and third. So first, second, third. And obviously those go in order of priority, because we know the VC is not going to read the whole deck. Only if they're super duper interested in battery packs might they dive into this information. So on the topic of words, we really try to avoid jargon. It is hot lava. We don't touch it. A lot of these startups are so technical, and we can end up talking like this when we're around our peers, but other people are hearing this. And again, if you confuse, you lose. So a great communication tool that we have is often for free, is photography and videos. I still don't see a lot of videos in pitch decks. I would love to. I think they're great. Photos I also don't see a ton of photos in pitch decks too. And they can be really powerful. So again, we just always want to be really careful what we're selecting to make sure we're using them to drive our message home. So some ways that photos can support your message. First of all, just an image of your product, obviously. It's like they say, it's worth 1,000 words. Another way is people using your product. This photo alone, without putting any words on the screen, gives us so much information. It's giving us context. It's giving us a use case. It's giving us an idea of the user profile. And we're showing, we're not telling. And that's allowing the viewer to just soak in this information without studying it. And another thing that even might not seem super obvious is in this third picture on the right, we're not even seeing the product, but we're seeing the world that the product lives in. And again, it's just giving us more context, where it might be used, who might use it. Ways that photos can hurt your message is just any way that they distract. So things that are distracting. Stock robot people are this like awful affliction that has infected the internet. There's just like every one good stock photo, there's probably, 100 of these. So you really have to sift through a lot if you're using stock photography. You want your poses to feel natural, like this guy on the top right. Unnatural poses. I don't know why so many people do this in stock photos. It's not a thing that normal people do. Don't put these in your deck. Or things that are just unrelated to your product whatsoever. Unless this is an agriculture product, this could be distracting. So you want to keep in mind what's in the photo too. Like just be deliberate about always be looking in the background as well. Like it's not just the subject, right? So this is a climate startup this is their website. And I think I want to show you how they use photos. So they use their technology and their methods to assess how energy efficient a home is. And then they make these recommendations of how you can fix it up. And then they, I think, fund and like put contractors in place for you to make your home more efficient. And it's a technical thing, this measuring of heat leakage and whatnot. But nowhere on their website are we seeing descriptions of their technology. What we're seeing is where their product lives and like who it's impacting. So we see a home. We get right away where this is happening. We see photos of people who benefit from this product. And again, we see photos of people who benefit from the product, and the impact that the product has is like, look how safe and comfortable and warm they are. And I also like to point out the illustrations, the graphics on this, because these types of graphics are the kind of graphics that I would recommend putting in your deck, because they're super simple and they're the kind that would make your CTO cry probably. And that's good. We don't want super duper technical drawings anywhere unless it's in your appendix, at your data room. If you know you're going into a conversation with somebody who really, really gets the tech already, then that is a good place for it. But usually in a pitch deck, for like a VC pitch deck, you would want something more like this. So charts and graphs, we see a ton of these in pitch decks. Again, we want them to always be in service of the overall message. I love to see charts that are idiot-proof, like 5th grader level. We don't want people doing a ton of work to figure out what the chart is about. So, I mean, looking at this at a glance, it's really obvious what we can learn from the chart, right? And part of the reason is that I actually took whatever the takeaway is from the chart, I like to just put that in the top of the slide as the title. Something like this is going to slow down your VC, and they're not, I mean, they've already seen 100 pitch decks today, like Adam said. So why are they going to go through here and be like, okay, well, it's this number and this number, and what am I supposed to take away from this? Whatever they're supposed to take away from it, you want to slap them with that information. Again, too much work to figure out what's going on here. I don't have time. Here's an example. This is a deck that I made. It's kind of a 5th grade level chart, right? And even if you don't look closely at the numbers, you can see, you can read the title and know what it's about. And everything here, and here is all in support of the message that we have up top. Here's an example where charts are hurting the message. The title here isn't really matching what's going on down here. We want it's complicated. I think you can tell. It feels overwhelming to come across all of this information all at once. And then links. I also don't see a ton of links in pitch decks. I think they're great because most of the decks that we're sending are, you can put live links in them. So why wouldn't you, if you had, sources to back up your claims, or if you had sort of a place where someone could dig deeper about a thing, but you don't want to overwhelm them with a ton of information up front, you can use links. So here's an example of a deck that I made, or a slide that I made. This one, I will point out that I broke my own rule of the wall of text, and that was deliberate. You're not meant to really read any of this text. The idea is just that, hey, there's a lot of people talking about this thing. And if you, and then all the links link to those articles that people are, where people are talking about the startup. Icons are wonderful. Sorry, my presenter notes disappeared. Oh, they just went away. All right, we're freestyling. So we see a ton of icons in pitch decks. And again, you just want to make sure they're always in service of your message. So here, even if we don't know what GPT is or BERT, we can see that a lightning bolt means fast. And so we're just kind of giving the viewer that extra little nudge to understand the information without having to study anything. Here's an example where the icons are not helping our message. First of all, I see 3, you could call it 4 maybe, icons on this slide. And then specifically this one I think is really confusing. I don't know what this is supposed to make me understand. So something I see all the time, a dead giveaway that you did not get a professional designer to do your deck, which it's totally fine if you're doing your decks alone. Tons of founders are, but a dead giveaway that you didn't get a professional to do it is something like this, which is icons that are from different sets. And so icons usually, or just like the default ones that you see in, in PowerPoint or Google Slides. So icons are designed much like fonts are, where they're all part of a set. So if you get the ones from the same set, even though these like seem similar, you can tell how this bottom row is just, it's tighter. And that will make your deck look a lot more polished if you use icons that are all from the same set. So how do we put all of this information into use? How to evaluate your current pitch deck? I like to always start with the macro and move to the micro. So we're always like looking at the big picture, just like that VC is, scanning through it, seeing if it makes sense, and then moving closer and closer in. So what's the basic story? And before we even look at any of the design, we want to know what is the basic story we're trying to tell. If we don't know that, we're gonna get really lost in the weeds trying to design something where there's no target. Does the whole thing make my point come across in less than 90 seconds? So the way that I like to assess something like this is I take a deck and I look at it in that thumbnail view. And because I can't read all of the text, it's too small, it forces you to look only at the biggest and brightest things on the page, whether they're words, charts, icons, photos. And the things you can clearly see in this view are where you're getting the biggest bang for your buck in terms of visual real estate. So just be really deliberate about what those things are. And then once we have looked at the big picture, we go into each individual slide and see, does this slide get its point across? And it's the same thing there. I make it really tiny on the screen and I squint at it. And does this get my point across? And then once we zoom in, we ask that same question. Are all of these individual little things in service of the larger message? So I want to point out, notice what the biggest words on this slide are. And notice how each of the individual elements is in service of that message. So you can read the title and you get it. And then you can look at this little graph of something of a line going up and to the right. And that just supports that message. You don't even necessarily need to know what this axis is. And then looking at the graphic, we're also servicing this message. And we're doing this all without words. Even the photos of the people are helping us understand who the target demographic is, instead of listing, this is the type of person that we're trying to target. So once again, before we move over to peer reviewing the decks, this is the free thing available to you. It is a free mini course on building pitch deck and a pitch deck guide. And I think Christy is just dropping that in the chat for now, the link there. And we will hop over to our decks. I'm going to stop sharing for a sec and I'll jump back in. So do we have Dells here from Agrify? We got a no-show. What?
I don't see them here in
We're
the
seeing
guide.
the Agrify deck, Zoe.
It's kind of fun to
Okay, thank you.
be part of that.
I think we do not have the creator of the Agrify deck.
Go to the place you've been going.
I think that is true unless I'm misplacing their name in our community list.
Okay, so let's hop over to Newsweek. Is Newsweek here?
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Hi. Newsweek,
Hello.
is this correct that you are joining us all the way from Bangladesh?
Yes,
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for being
It's late
here.
at night and I have nothing better to do. So
Well, we are happy to have you. So this is the deck that we
yes,
received from
looking
you.
at
Is
my
this
most haphazard attempt at a pitch deck.
all right? Perfect. So it's a work in progress, is what I'm hearing.
Technically, it's all the information I had to put, it's all there, but rather like this was my first attempt at a entrepreneurship competition. So it's like you said, I was just high on adrenaline that entire time. I just had to win.
Okay, well, that seems like a good approach. Just get high on adrenaline and pump this thing out. Um, I'm seeing some. Actually, never mind. Sorry. Back to our programming. Okay, so let's take a look at Newsweek's deck. And first of all, I want to say thank you so much, Newsweek, for sharing this with us and being brave and putting your deck on the chopping block. And I just want to remind everyone that this is a safe space and a supportive environment, and this is all in efforts to make each other's work better. Does anybody know how to, oh wait, slides order? There we go. All right, so Newsweek, I'm not going to ask you at first. I'm not going to ask you any questions at first. I'm going to ask everybody else to comment, because the beauty of having all these people in here is that, and them not knowing your company, is that we have very fresh eyes. And that's super duper valuable, because as anybody knows who's trying to build one of these, yeah, you can get really lost in there. So I think what I'm going to do, so we're looking big picture. I think actually what I'm going to do is go back to here. I'm going to click through each slide for about 3 seconds, the way that somebody might do if they were skimming through this deck for the first time. And I want us all to look at it and pretend that we're an investor, and kind of ask ourselves these questions of what's in it for me here. So here we go. Okay. So if I could get someone to raise their hand and answer, what do you think is, what is the problem that this startup is solving?
That's a really good question.
Is that your answer to the question?
Yes.
Okay.
It is. I couldn't get, it's something climate related, but it was hard to tell exactly what it is. My initial take is there's probably 10 times too many words on each slide.
Agneta, what do you think is the problem that this startup is solving?
And the only thing I could really grasp is something AI, because I saw the competitors. There was a list of AI competitors, so AI is involved somehow in the
Okay.
solution. But I don't know, as I missed the first slide or something. I don't know.
Okay. So something AI, we know it's something climate related. We know it has to do with AI. Krista.
I was thinking that it was, I just really had time to read the number one bullet point in each of the red squares. Like that's what jumped out to me. So it looks like it's talking about pollution in megacities, and it sounds like it's an adaptation solution as opposed to mitigation or preservation, something like that. And that it's using technology and AI to solve that challenge.
Great. Marcia.
Oh, I was thinking that it was a software that does some of like the project background info. Because it says leading climate insights platform. I don't know if that's related to it, but it looks like it's an iterative project or product. So it's constantly improving. So I got that much out of it.
Something iterative.
And AI. So yeah.
I like how everyone's like AI. Sarah.
My take was that problems they're trying to solve a lot of problems, and it would be great to focus on like a core problem. Help me understand.
Okay, thank you. So there's a lot of problems, and it might help her to focus on one problem. Nusrik, how's this hitting you? How are you feeling?
I honestly got off easy.
Why is that?
Well, like I said, it was a haphazard attempt, and the reason you're all seeing too much mention of AI is, well, if you look at which slide is this, I think it's towards the end. It was made by me and two of my friends. Now, all of us are from an engineering background. I'm sorry for this little backstory. Now, we have technically no prior experience to designing AI. Like what you're looking at is idea at its core. Like we had no tangible data to work with. We're just stringing up ideas and to whichever sounds the best for the entrepreneurship award. So and now with all your advice, I can, and well, the passage of time, I can actually see the errors too. Thank you.
Okay. When do you want to tell us what problem your startup is solving?
As far as I remember, it's been quite some time actually. So like this particular program, its focus is on urban areas. It would collect live air pollution data and technically regulate daily activities of citizens of a city.
So the problem is air pollution. Am I getting that right?
Yes, we would start off with air pollution, then would make our way to water pollution. If that doesn't work out, we'd mostly center our product around air pollution.
Okay. So the problem is air pollution, and then you might move it to water pollution.
Yes,
Okay.
specifically to urban areas.
In
Think
urban
city.
areas. In urban areas. Okay. So let's just start with the problem. As a lot of us probably know, and if you don't know, I will just tell you that we pretty much every deck starts with a problem slide where we want to tell people what is the problem that we're solving. And this can actually be really challenging, especially in the climate space, because the problems are so complex. They're so multifaceted. It's like, where do we start? And I do encourage when we talk about the problem to, we have to kind of, we can't talk about the big picture, but we do still have to make it seem really big in terms of how expensive the problem is, because then we know that it could be a good investing opportunity. So what are some ways that Nusrik might be able to make the problem more clear from the jump? So from from this slide? Robin.
So I speak engineer and I've gone through this with water data. I have a couple of questions that might help define the problem. First of all, who needs this data? Why would you want to collect it? Who would use it? And is it already being collected and just needs to be sourced and analyzed in some way? So that to me, that would be the first problem. What is the problem that you're trying to fix? Is there a problem collecting air quality data in cities? And who is that a problem for? So that to me, that would be the first way of framing giving context to this. Who is this even a problem for?
Yeah. I like how you said, who is it a problem for? Because that can really help us figure out how to talk about our problem. And yeah, I think you were saying, is there a problem with the data being collected? And so let's just say that that was the case. How could we explain that, like, data being collected might be how can we explain that this problem is something that the investor should care about? Krista?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna continue on with my question. I'll come back.
Okay, thanks, Robin.
Oh, I almost forgot. Oh, I just want to ask you again to expand a little bit. I thought that was such an interesting comment about the problem. You said don't make it too large because then it's not defensible. So if you can just expand a little bit on that comment, I would really appreciate it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
If there's something more to say.
if we say, like, climate change is ending the world as we know it, that's certainly a problem, but it's too abstract and there's no dollar amount attached to it for it to grab an investor's attention. So here we're narrowing in on the problem, which may or may not be the idea of measuring air pollution. And Krista, did you have something that you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I just want to say, just to answer your question of what are some ways that you could show the problem.
Yeah.
Really being two things, really being very clear of what problem you're trying to solve and who are you trying to solve it for in the least number of words possible. But even better, I was thinking the great thing about the problem of air pollution is that it's such a visual problem, and it's so easy to see that, like, this is dirty air and this is clean air, and, like, which world do you want to live in? And I was almost envisioning, like, on the left you have horrible air pollution, then they use Newsweek's solution and they get to the picture on the right, which is like this beautiful, clean, healthy air with happy, joyful people, and showing that if you make this investment, like, you're a part of that shift.
Yes, I love that. Yes, air pollution is very visual, and we know what it looks like, which is such a luxury that this project has. Sometimes founders are working on problems that can't be seen by the naked eye, and so it's really hard to show a photo of, you know, what it looks like when we have the problem and what it looks like when it's solved. But here, yeah, we could do something on the left and the right showing the problem and then what it looks like afterwards, or maybe in our solution slide is where that photo of the clean air comes in. Eve.
Thank you. One way that we have also a complex problem that we're trying to solve with our business, which is a new approach to cooking that is designed to unlock regenerative transformation in the food system. And so because that, like, plays on so many different parts of so many different problems in so many different areas of a really complex system. One way that we've tried to deal with that in the pitch deck is actually to open with an opportunity. And so rather than just saying like, this is the problem that we're trying to solve, which I like totally relate to this slide because we've had slides that look like this too. It just kind of says like, this is the future that we're trying to bring about, and a really clear statement about how our business is trying to achieve that. And so like the current version is like Marcellus Foods is the future of cooking. And so just to really like kind of zero in and set the stage for how we're going to impact why the food system is the way that it is throughout the rest of the deck, rather than opening with trying to cement a problem. We found that like our investors understand that, you know, if you're going after a cooking solution, there's a lot, you know, that's a large market size, and kind of really being tailored about who we're showing the deck to help this get to that. So I don't know if that could be an option here too.
Yeah, I love that you shared that. Can you tell us why, or can you tell us what shift you noticed in any when you changed how you did your narrative?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just opened up a lot of opportunity for us to tell a more concise story. I think like we found that trying to narrow in on one problem either made the story too narrow to like hit all the points that we wanted to without really like explaining a lot, or it wound up sounding too lofty, like you were saying about, you know, if you know climate change is threatening our way of life. Like a lot of the sort of problem slides that we started wound up sounding a little bit like that. So it was either way too broad, or it was like too narrow, specific, and a little like almost like the data version of jargon, just like kind of narrowing us down. And so this allowed us to really tell our story about a new solution, a new approach, rather than immediately dropping people into a story about like the grocery industry or food processing and manufacturing specifically. It kind of allowed us to have a little more room to tell the full breadth of our solution.
Yeah. It's a really tricky thing, defining the problem.
I don't know if we're there yet, but the current approach.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of testing it, right? And seeing how it lands with people. Because ultimately, you know, we don't have any perfect recipe for a pitch deck. We just have different things that we can try. Adam, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I would suggest that the problem here has actually little to do with data collection. It's how you're part of the solution to solving the problem. Just from what I'm seeing here, and Newsweek, if I'm off, feel free to tell me so. But I think what you're trying to do here is not gather data, but inform people when the air around them is not healthy, and then they can take appropriate action for that. You know, so maybe a problem statement is, you know, air pollution kills 10 million people a year in the United States or something like that. And here's how we can reduce that number.
One moment. Thank you. Yeah, I think overall, is anybody noticing some of the things that we talked about during the session? We talked about words, photos, charts, icons, color. I guess we didn't talk about color, but we can. Is anybody noticing ways that opportunities for improvement here? Let's just talk about text overall. Deepa?
Hi, Newsweek. Thank you for doing this. You're very brave. And I'm about to do this at the end of February in person with a group. So the the feedback that I have is I totally understand exactly what you're trying to say here. But a good way to do it is the way, you know, we're talking about is using images. So if you use an image of high rises in Bombay with air pollution behind it, and then the other points is where you have people that are living in a bad condition and maybe even like having a hard time breathing, either or. So like the other lady first said is on the left-hand side, you can show that building with air pollution and say, you know, kind of say, this is the root cause of air pollution in India is because of A, the level of urbanization, and B, the health issues that it's creating. And so it's very image, like it's just based on image and like very few words that says urbanization problem causing health risk, right? And this way you are showing an image with the pollution and getting the message across that, you know, we have a huge problem with not being able to breathe good air, right? And then you progress through that to the rest of the slides, you know, and you know, and kind of tell your story more. Like, so you start with the high level, then the next level is what is the next message that you want to put in there? And then what's a third? And then, okay, what is the solution, right? So as I said, I'm doing this at the end of the month, and my deck is full of images about biodiversity because I'm saying the work that I'm doing in climate is because I care about our biodiversity and we need to save it. But the reason we have the impact that we have is because of all the, you know, the industrialization. So my suggestion would be like start with a very good image of high rises with air pollution and then people living in a condition that's not healthy and say, here's the root cause of problem. And then how are you going to go, like maybe 2 or 3 slides about that. And then how are you going to go about solving that problem? Because the one thing I gained from the slides is you want to use AI in whatever solution you're providing. And I saw your business model. How are you going to make revenue? Like those were very clear. Everything else was a little hard to read. So images, few texts, and that's my feedback.
Thank you, Deepa. Yeah, I think what the high level here, I'm seeing that I think there's a lot of opportunity for just taking the text on each slide and asking, can we turn this into a photo? Can we turn this into an icon? Can we turn this into a chart? Or can we just eliminate it altogether? And I am seeing that a few other decks have come in since we have a little bit more time than we expected. So I'd like to switch over to Marcellus Foods if we can. Eve, are you down?
Yeah, I'm down.
Okay, cool.
So can I make a quick one comment and then I'll go back on mute?
Sure.
Especially for Newsrick. Pexels, PEXELS.com has a lot of free images and they're really good. So
yeah,
you can download images from there. I mean, half of my slide is built with images from there.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Free stock photography. I would use it. Just be careful. Just be careful not to put robot people in there.
And then Zoe, I think Eve might have actually had this question in the chat earlier. If you had any recommendations for good platforms to post video in a slide deck.
Platforms to post video in a slide deck. Yeah. So if you are building your deck in Google Slides, you can embed a YouTube video in it seamlessly. I think that's the only one that I've done personally. I think I've tried to do, yeah, I think if you're using DocSend, at least the last time that I used DocSend, it wouldn't play directly in the player.
So would you have
Yeah.
to you'd have to send it as a Google Slides then?
Yeah, I mean,
Where
but
to
that was
play?
it, they're updating things all the time. So it's
Yeah.
possible that there's a better answer that I just don't know.
Also, if you don't send the video with the deck and somebody watching it doesn't have an internet connection or they have a bad one, it's not going to work very well.
Yeah.
Or at all.
I've always been afraid of, we have just a ton of like YouTube content and Instagram reels, but I've always been afraid of including them because of just compatibility issues, and I wouldn't want it to be distracting if that's sort of like what the slide hinges on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You can use GIFs. You can attach the GIFs to the PowerPoint slide, but it makes the file slightly bigger. You can also embed the images from Drive into the Google Drive file as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've seen GIFs not work great in, well, it's such a compatibility mess. Like if you're linking up your Google Slides to your DocSend, then it will like break the GIF. But if you're just sending the Google Slides, then it'll use the GIF. I don't know. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the big picture of Marcella's deck, or I'm sorry, Eve's deck, which is called Marcellus. So let's just skim through it like we're investors and kind of ask ourselves like, what's this about? Why should I care? What's in it for me? Okay. Anybody want to tell us what problem this startup is solving? Sarah.
People struggle to eat a healthy diet, and so their proposed solution, healthy nutritious diet, and it's easier if you have prepped food, and so their solution is to create food prep kits.
Eve, is that accurate?
Yeah, it's pretty accurate.
Awesome. Well done. How big is this problem? Did anyone get an idea of how big the problem is from the deck? I'm gonna call on Melina, since we haven't heard from you yet.
I didn't get a sense of that, and partially because I was hung up on the terminology used on the second slide, I think third slide. I don't know what a regenerative food system is. And so I just sort of looked at everything through the concept of food prep, which there are a bunch of companies doing already. And I didn't have a feel for this being unique. Like I got a sense that it was somehow, but I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't quite an answer to your question, but
another fresh-eyed perspective.
It is a very visually attractive deck. Very visually attractive. I will say that. I really like it.
I agree. I think it's really nice to look at. You know what I love about this deck? There's so much white space. All of this text has so much room to breathe. And there's something that feels, it gives you a sense of ease and calm when we see something like that, that's not packed with text all the way to the margins or all the way up against the photos.
I think that it also makes the colors of the vegetables really stand out, and it really makes it feel fresh and healthy, and it gets me thinking about food and growing. I think there's a connection that you're making there, Eve, that I missed. We haven't gone in depth yet. So
I think that's a great, that's a great question that I have and that we've had in many iterations of building out the deck. First of all, thank you for the positive comments about the design. It's been a labor of love. And I'm super proud that almost every photo in this deck is something that we shot ourselves. And so it is like a true representation of our product, of our vision, of us. But one thing that we've a question that we've had is, who is our deck for? We know that we are speaking, our ideal investor is a regenerative food system investor. And so rather than trying to explain what that means, we chose to be very clear at the outset that that's what that's who we're talking to. And so we do assume a lot of background knowledge about food systems in general to be able to understand and answer that question of how big a problem this is. To that end, I think, where we've attempted to try and get that in is sort of on this market opportunity slide, whereas you can see I haven't, which is towards the end of a very long deck, which I haven't done the market sizing for yet, but basically, that was why we sort of came out of the gate, this is a regenerative model, kind of using that terminology, even though we know that's niche, because that's the investor that we're trying to talk to.
Yeah, it's again, you're thinking about who your intended audience is. And so that person already knows what regenerative agriculture system is. A regenerative food system, rather. So how do you think, so we know that this is creating a better regenerative food system. Actually, maybe let me ask, what do we think is special about this company? Or do we know from looking at this? Let me make it a little bit bigger.
So do you mind if I pipe in?
Sure, what do you got?
First of all, Eve, I think it's brilliant. And absolutely, you're right. The right audience is going to get this. Anybody who's into regenerative ag, part of the hidden problem there is if you have regenerative ag, but you don't have a regenerative food system, you don't have a regenerative system. And you're solving that last mile piece, essentially. And I think that that's brilliant. And I think you do a really good job of explaining that in this deck. As somebody who's been pretty involved in climate for the past couple of years, I can see where you're going with this, and I think it's a great idea, and I think you've done a really good job of communicating it. There's some additional simplicity I think you could give to it, but the whole idea of being the last mile of a regenerative food industry is, I think, something that a lot of impact investors, particularly those involved in regenerative ag, are going to really like.
Appreciate that.
Sorry, Zoe, did that answer your question?
I think so. I think I was asking how is it special? Deepa?
So being a cook and having written a cookbook and learning a lot more about regenerative agriculture, the one thing that I miss in this slide deck, which is absolutely beautiful, very concise and clear, but it's like, how are you tying food prep to the regenerative agriculture? right? Because regenerative agriculture is all about improving the soil and less use of fertilizers and, like kind of having growing plants with flowers, like food with flowers and things like that. And prep is, I'm taking all those great vegetables and giving you something that you already can take and create or like cook the recipe, almost like the fresh HelloFresh kind of concept is what I got. I don't know if that's the same, but I think it would be great because you're sending the message of regenerative agriculture. Figure out a way to tie that message, those two together. At least that's what I got.
The business model section a little bit, because I think so this is really where we're trying to drive home that point of like, why can't the existing frameworks of our food system deliver a regenerative transformation? And I think, we did kind of skip over how do regenerative on-farm practices, what does that mean to define that? But really, what we're trying to get across in this section is the way that our business model is set up to reimagine the process of getting food from farm to plate, and that will be a regenerative, that unless that's a regenerative system, that regenerative agriculture itself can't scale. And so that's really what we're trying to do here. And so that's what we're trying to get across in this section.
So I'm going to ask a follow-up question. So is your business sending prepped kits to people to cook? Or is it something else? Because from the first slides I got was like, you're sending prepped food to cook.
Yeah, so I think that like part of the challenge that we have had is that there is, because of meal kits, there is such a people's automatic association with anything that has to do with prep or cooking is that it's going to be a meal kit that's sent in the mail. But our channel strategy is actually to develop owned retail and wholesale to sell to, so we actually source, process, and sell preps themselves, which are pre-cooked ingredients, which seems like a nuanced maybe solution, but it's a pretty simple solution. It's just like pre-cooked foods are not available and they make cooking faster and easier, and then your final result is better. Zoe, to answer your earlier question, I think what we were trying to get across is what's really special about us is our team, because our team has a tremendous amount of experience and has invested a ton of time and energy into kind of figuring out this solution. And we have a really diverse set of experience on our team. And so I think that's what we were really trying to get across with both the timeline, the founder, and the advisor slides, is how this solution was actually built out of as a result of everything that we've learned throughout our work across the food system. I'm not sure if that's, coming across.
No, so right from the first few slides, right? Like it's like you're starting with regenerative food system, but then you're going to preps. And so if there's, and I don't know how to quite do this, but if you can tie those two together, then it's like, okay, because your business is providing pre-cooked, chopped vegetables and produce to people so they can take it home and cook, right?
Yeah, and beans and grains and proteins.
Yeah, so I would start with that and then figure out a way to tie it into how this helps with regenerative agriculture. Because then it's like your message is very clear that we provide pre-cooked vegetables that are chopped, so you don't have to do chopping or any of that. At least that's just my feedback, being, I'm working on my second cookbook. So, that's like, to me, this is very personal.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it sounds like you're having a bit of an issue, Eve, with people misunderstanding and thinking that it's a meal prep like a Blue Apron thing or something, just like assuming that right off the bat.
Totally.
Yeah, I think I think a bit of what Deepa was saying here, and I agree with it, is like the photos that we're seeing at the front end of the deck all kind of feel like a meal kit. And so I had that assumption too when I first jumped in. And I'm wondering, how could we flip that so people aren't like, oh, another meal kit?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're going into that more later in the deck.
Yeah.
And what I'm noticing that's in parallel to this is like a meal kit company, you know, they've been done. You're not a meal kit company. You're doing something more, something special, something regenerative, and something at a larger scale, I think. And so I think as a VC, I would want to know a little bit of this stuff up front, because now you're really talking like, you're using words like supply chain. We're talking about a larger scale of things. So I want more clues up front that we're talking about something larger than like what's on your table. And so just visually, I can see how even if you were just looking at these 6 slides and kind of taking a snapshot, you might think that it's a smaller thing than what it really is. Is that helpful to you?
It is. It definitely is. It makes sense. I think, you know, my first reaction is like, okay, so that like we need some sort of summary slide of the whole, like to visualize the whole system and then drill into exactly what the preps are and why they're different, which I think is manageable.
Yeah.
Zoe, can I make a quick suggestion?
Sure.
Just because I'm a word guy.
I'm next.
Yeah. The future.
Yeah, actually, Adam, I think we're gonna jump to Agneta since she had her hand raised. Go ahead, Agneta.
Oh, that's okay. No, I just wanted to say that a couple of things. It's still very, very hard, and part of the problem is to find food that is regenerative. There's still not enough farmers doing it. I'm super excited. I just recently found some lentils at Whole Foods that were regenerative. So I think like for people that do understand and people that want to support this effort and want regenerative food, just having an outlet where you can find it would be amazing. And then I just wanted to perhaps make an intro, suggest that maybe Alex Edquist with Good Agriculture, she was doing just that. She was trying to find food that is regenerative, and she ended up starting more of a business support company for farmers that are doing regenerative agriculture to help them to do more. So anyway, you're happy if you want to, you can reach out. You can reach out directly to her. That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Yeah, was it Alice Waters that you were mentioning? I think
Excuse me?
Did you mention Alice Waters? Is that who you were talking about?
No, her name is Alex Edquist.
Oh,
I know Alex.
Oh, okay.
Oh, great.
Okay. Okay, good.
And Adam, did you want something? Did you have something to add?
Yeah, just a suggestion, Eve. The phrase "the future of cooking," it feels to me like it's a little bit off target. And maybe what you can do is use the fact that people see this as a meal kit and leverage that. So maybe your next generation meal kits, regenerative next generation meal kits. I don't know what the right words would be, but if that's what people are seeing, you can fight it, or you can try and leverage it to get your message a little bit easier to understand.
Something that I'm wondering here is, so because we talked about how the photos here are all of, and these are beautiful photos that you mentioned that you all, your team took yourself. So well done. I think this image up front shows us an idea of like a bigger picture pretty fast. So what are some ways that we might be able to show retail? Because you mentioned retail and wholesale. And that's different than a delivered meal kit. So what are some ways we might show that with photos up front? And I noticed you have this here.
Yeah.
Do we feel like this is Jessica?
Hi, this is an awesome deck. Sorry, I'm on my phone, that's why my camera is off, but really loving everything that we're talking about today. I work with an organization through the agency I work with called What If Foods. It's actually a company, you might have heard of What If Foods. So we talk a lot about like regenerative food systems, and I think that one thing that you could use to illustrate more in this deck is showcasing like more of the partnerships with the farmers specifically. So like images of like the actual regenerative agriculture happening. I think that can be really illustrative and like help show the bigger story behind just the food and the meals. That's really all I wanted to say, but I really love the deck. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And here, I think it is, do these photos say retail and wholesale to you guys? What might make this look like more of a retail photo?
Shelves in a grocery store.
Yeah, shelves at a grocery store. And wholesale, well, I guess, yeah, this does say, to me, this does say professional kitchen. But yeah. We have, oh, we're at time already. Okay, sorry, Brian.